items up?
All good, Chair.
Thank you. I declare open this public hearing of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Public Works into the proposed Services Australia proposed fit-out of new leased premises at 158 to 186 Walker Street, Townsville, in the great state of Queensland. In accordance with the committee's resolution, this hearing will be broadcast on the Parliament's website, and the proof and official transcripts of proceedings will be published on the Parliament's website. I also remind members of the media who may be present or listening on the web of the need to fairly and accurately report to the proceedings of the committee. My name is Graham Perrott. I'm the chair of the committee, who is appearing today from the Sydney CPO, and I give the apologies for the deputy chair, newly appointed deputy chair, who can't join us today, even though this covers a part of his part of the world. The deputy chair from Dawson covers the southern suburbs of Townsville. I now ask the committee members to introduce themselves. To go to Karen.
Karen Andrews, Federal Member for McPherson on the Gold Coast.
Thanks, Karen. Senator.
Maria Kovacic, Senator for New South Wales.
And then to the north, to ACT.
Dave Smith, Federal Member for Bean, ACT.
ACT, thank you. I now welcome representatives from Services Australia to give evidence. And for the Hansard record, would you please each state your full name and the capacity in which you appear?
Thank you, Chair. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their continuing connection to land, waters and community. We pay our respects to all First Nations peoples, their cultures and to their elders, past and present. My name is Stuart Brasendale, the National Manager, Property and Corporate Support of Services Australia, and I'm the agency lead witness for today's hearing on the proposed fit-out of our accommodation premises at the Townsville Office Precinct in Townsville CBD. I now ask the agency witnesses to introduce themselves.
Ms Melissa Felton, Director of Leasing and Accommodation.
Matt Figgis, Director of Turner Townsend Cost Planning.
Kate Hamilton, Senior Designer, DJAS Architecture.
Mr Benjamin Jones, Project Director.
Mark Davis, representing Conchia as the agency's Project Manager, Contract Administrator.
Thank you, Mr Davis. Although the committee does not require you to give evidence under oath, I should advise you that these hearings are formal proceedings of the Parliament. Consequently, they warrant the same respect as proceedings of the Parliament itself. Giving false or misleading evidence is a serious matter and may be regarded as a contempt of Parliament. Mr Brasendale, would you care to make some brief introductory remarks before we proceed to questions?
Yes, thank you, Chair. This project will provide fit-for-purpose office space and is the key project supporting the consolidation of 3 of Agency's Townsville leases across 2 sites into one by 2027. This proposal is in accordance with the Commonwealth leasing strategy. The scope includes a fit-out providing 7,145 square metres of office space to accommodate approximately 600 staff. The total delivery phase budget is $27.21 million. None of the expiring Townsville leases occupied by Services Australia provide sufficient facilities for the agency's operations into the future, nor do they align with sustainability targets or modern work practices. The proposed fit-out will address these issues. The project's construction will be managed by the landlord's engagement of a head contractor and will encourage local industry participation in accordance with Commonwealth procurement requirements. Engagement with local stakeholders is occurring as required throughout the project's development. Internal Services Australia consultation has already commenced with executives, regional managers and staff. Additional information sessions and design briefs will be available to staff as the fit-out is further developed. Subject to parliamentary approval, construction activities are forecast to commence in September 2025 and are expected to be completed by May 2026. Chair, thank you for the opportunity to present. That concludes my opening statement. The Services Australia witnesses are ready to answer questions from the committee.
Thank you, Mr Brasendale. Townsville recently got very wet. There's going to be some construction pressures, I would imagine, for the north, and not just Townsville, but for Ingham and that market. I was wondering if you could tell me how you have considered that when it comes to presenting this information to the committee today.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, of course, yes, it's sad that there's been a lot of damage across the Townsville community, which we've been supporting as best we can as an agency. The weather conditions or likely impacts have been considered as part of the P80 cost estimate, so it has been accounted for. We understand that part of Australia can be impacted by weather, and so that's been accounted for as part of the contingency. The recent flooding did not significantly impact the current site where this development will progress. I might just hand to Project Director Mr Benjamin Jones for any further comment.
Yeah, absolutely. So in advance of the PwC submission, the landlord has taken it upon himself as well to start that construction on an earlier basis at nil cost to the agency and nil risk to proceed, which is a huge impact. So we've actually seen how the flooding impacts the particular area. Now, in regards to the costings, though, for the base building perspective, that would fall solely on the landlord. But from a fit-out perspective, we do allow for it within the contingency and the escalation budget for the potential of those delays to certain products. But in addition to that, we value engineer throughout the life of the project, where potentially a resource might become more scarce and it can be replaced with something that also meets the requirements of net zero and allows for a quicker delivery time. We do make those throughout the life of the project.
Okay, so that contingency, just from memory, it's not a Northern Australia contingency, it's just a normal contingency.
So the assessment for the contingency of the 18% is based on the region. So that was part of that Monte Carlo assessment with risk, and one of the risks identified was also the flooding.
Sorry, you did refer to that earlier, I beg your pardon. Okay, we'll go to Mrs Andrews.
Look, thank you, Chair. Look, I'm interested. I mean, I grew up in Townsville, so Aikenvale's 10-15 minutes away from the CBD. You indicated in your presentation, I believe, that people would be relocated from Aikenvale into the city location. Will any of those people live further out than Aikenvale and then find it difficult to transfer into the city?
That's certainly something we'd be working through all our staff with Ms Andrews as we progress consultation with staff. You know, we don't foresee that to be a significant issue based on the available parking around the CBD area where the new development will progress. Additionally, you know, public transport all terminates into the CBD. So, yeah, we think that it's suitable for staff that presently work in Aikenvale to be able to relocate into the city centre. There will be, as I said, there continued presence out in that area with our face-to-face customer service area. So it's only those back of house staff that are relocating into the CBD.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Can you take the committee through the consultation that you've undertaken in relation to this project, not only with staff but with other stakeholders?
Yeah, thank you. Look, our formal consultation as per our enterprise agreement will progress as we formalise the design, and subject to parliamentary approval, we would go through a formal consultation process with all impacted staff, enable them to ask any questions and engage with us. To date, again, all our staff are aware of the proposed project. We've been engaging with key leaders and executives to ensure that business and design needs are met within our early design planning, and we'll continue to formally engage with both all staff and CPSU as the project progresses.
Okay, what about people outside of that would be stakeholders? So local government, the local federal member.
Look, at this stage we haven't engaged beyond our own agency. We're advised to work with the Department of Finance, and no local impact assessment is required, so we haven't done that to date. We'll continue to do that subject to parliamentary approval.
So why is no local impact consultation required?
Due to the, as I understand it, due to the largely retaining in the similar geographic area.
Okay.
So did you mean, like, from a planning point of view, Mr Brasendale, no assessment, or did what I think Mrs Andrews meant something slightly different in terms of stakeholder consultation? Were you talking in a planning sense
Yes,
Brasendale?
specifically the local impact assessment that could potentially be required by the Department of Finance, and it isn't required. I would agree that we will continue with broader community consultation and local members as things progress.
But just to be clear, so far there's been no consultation.
Correct.
Waiting for our green light, Mrs Andrews. All right, Senator Kovacic.
Thank you. My questions relate to cost, and I know you spoke about the P80 and the Monte Carlo, but just for my understanding, the P80 the costings have also been based on regional, not just the Monte Carlo piece. So both have had this, specific, regional overlay on them. I'm just sort of concerned about, we kind of did it here but not here, and it wasn't enough in relation to overruns.
Thank you, Senator. Mr Jones, do you want to comment on that? Or
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. So in the P80 estimate, so it's a combination between the internal contracts that we hold and also the contracts that we'll bring on board. So that's to do with workstations, all these additions. Now, in advance, a lot of those factories aren't based, obviously, in Townsville, so a lot of it is added in the P80 for delivery costs, expectation of time frame to get it there, and all that is part of that consideration. So it's not a nationwide thing, it is locality based. And that would be significantly impacted if, say, it became Bamaga and those sort of things. Those P80s you'd expect to jump quite significantly as well.
Sure. And the project's timeline has shifted, so have the cost implications from those delays also been factored in as well?
I might hand to Mr Figgis, our quantity surveyor.
Yes, sure. We've incorporated escalation at 5.5% to the midpoint of construction, which is standard practice.
With that being standard practice, has that 5.5% been an actually accurate figure over time? So while it's standard, have we seen cost overruns of 7 or 8%, or do they sit around that 5.5% mark? Is that what we're seeing now?
That's what we're predicting at the moment, 5.5% for the next year. But we've also incorporated additional monies into the base cost anyway for the to do work in Townsville, as you alluded to earlier. It's a little bit more expensive, so that's in the base cost as well.
Okay, thank you. That's it for me, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr Smith.
Thanks, Chair. Mr Brasendale, how many work points are there going to be available in the new office?
We're planning to have around 558 work points available. Yep. For approximately 600 staff. And as I mentioned, that's based on our 8 workstations to 10 staff ratio. We are also setting this up so that there could be greater flexibility within that. So we've got options with the way we're designing it such that we could change that ratio subject to needs, whether that's for individual teams or business areas, or whether there was significant changes to our staffing requirement in the Townsville area.
And how many of those work points are you expecting to be utilised?
We would hope to utilise them all on a regular basis. That's probably the optimum. We'd expect that we've got some capacity there based on our current occupancy and our ratio of staff that work from home and are part time. But we think that will meet our need.
Yeah. So on the current balance between work from home, what does that look like with the work points?
Well, presently in the Townsville area, we have around 20 to 25% of our team members that have got a work from home arrangement. Similarly, we've got around 25% of our team members up there that are less than full-time, part-time, so that's been factored into has an impact on our occupancy in the current arrangement, where we've presently got a one-to-one ratio of staff members to desks across our existing occupancies.
Thanks, Mr Brasendale. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks very much, Mr Smith. Mr Brasendale, could you I know you haven't started consultations yet, but could you just talk me through the car parking which I think currently at Aikenvale there's now 72.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, there is. There will be a reduction of available car parking compared to what's at Aikenvale and Stanley Street. When we move, or subject to approval, if we move to Walker Street, there'll be 40 car parks. So it's a reduction of car parking. But as I mentioned,
so just talk us through that. So you think people will use public transport to get into the CBD?
Either a combination of public transport, or there is a range of other public car parks available around the area. The building itself will have a public car park below our tenancy, and there are other additional public car parks within a reasonable radius. The current car parking, by no way meets all of our team members. It's only a very small subset of our existing Townsville staffing cohort, which is typical for any of our regional offices. We typically don't provide a large number of car parks for our team members. And
do you know what it costs to park on the street in Townsville? Is it? I assume it's a bit cheaper than Sydney or Melbourne.
I assume it would be, Chair, but sorry, no, I won't hesitate to. I won't try to guess what the parking rates are in Townsville.
Okay, and I noticed you're providing electric vehicles. Is that for Services Australia electric vehicles or employees?
No, that's for our fleet vehicles. Yes, we have a number of our fleet vehicles, and we're transitioning to electric vehicles right across our fleet. I think we have 6 vehicles in our fleet in Townsville, and the Walker Street fit out is inclusive of 10 EV charging bays in our car park. And
so are they stored there overnight or charged there during the day? What's the arrangement?
Yeah, typically they would be. Yeah, our fleet cars would be in our car park overnight, and that's when they would be charged overnight. Yep.
Oh, so they're a work vehicle during the day rather than a home. Yeah,
correct. Okay. Yes. Yeah, they're used by a number of our teams to go and visit other customers out in the community, etc.
Yeah. Mrs. Andrews, any more on the?
No, I think I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right. Thank you for your attendance here today. You'll be sent a copy of the transcript to make any corrections to the transcription, and I declare this public hearing closed.